Hi, welcome to this short video clip in which we're going to talk a little bit about how we engage young people in our project. Our project is called Futures and it's a service that sits within Leeds Children's Services. The aim of Futures is to work with young parents aged 25 years and under to reduce the likelihood of recurrent care proceedings. And more recently we've supported some young people through the Prebirth assessment process. Engagement is key to our work because all our work is relational based, and we work really hard to develop a relationship where high support and high challenge can be tolerated. We work as a team, we meet weekly as a team to understand the barriers to engagement, and we work off each barrier to try and understand what's happening. We use formulation to guide our practice, and we really work with the social discipline window with the aim of working collaboratively with a young person. We've learnt a lot about engagement, and we've developed an 8-week engagement phase where we really work hard to develop a relationship, and we see that as our responsibility and not as the responsibility of the young person. So we really take a trauma-informed lens when developing a relationship. The team are now going to talk a little bit about how they do engage young people and what it's actually like working in a service like Futures. So can you tell us a little bit about how you would start to engage a young person in working with Futures?
So in a practical sense, so we're quite persistent.
Very persistent.
Yeah. So a young person not answering the phone or a text doesn't necessarily mean we would give up on them.
No. So things that we've used, things that I've particularly used in the past are letters, but handwritten.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily on formal letter-headed paper. Just little notes saying why I've been trying to contact them.
A card through the door.
Yeah.
Going back to the referrer, I think seeing if there's anybody around that might be able to help, if that would be appropriate, checking in if they have changed the numbers or if they are staying somewhere else.
A trusted member of the support network that they've got a good relationship with.
Yeah,
perhaps.
or another professional that they might be have worked with in the past.
They might have other meetings that sometimes you can be involved in a sort of gentle way that's less intense, I suppose, rather than just turning up on their doorstep and them not knowing who you are. Found that could be quite a good way of gently introducing yourself.
Yeah.
But also, I suppose the difficulty with that is the association, isn't it? What does the young person associate you with? And I suppose because a lot of our referrals are from social care, how we engage, I suppose, is making sure we do the things that they wouldn't necessarily associate.
Yeah. And being prepared to try different things, I think. So for the most part, we wouldn't drop in on somebody without knowing them. But I think there are examples where that has worked.
Right.
So it's not applying hard and fast principles, isn't it? Being prepared to think creatively. And there's ways to drop in and that show that you care and that you're holding somebody in mind, aren't there?
Yeah, without being intrusive.
And giving somebody a different experience of that.
Yeah, there's also like using community and using where they live and where they're at and going to them, isn't there, about sort of like just even suggesting local parks and cafes and that informality of this doesn't have to be in
a clinical
building
setting
or
and that fits in quite well, doesn't it, with the idea of sort of sitting with, that we do a lot anyway, emotionally sitting with the young person and not kind of minimizing what they might be finding difficult in their life. So actually being in their community and staying there and finding what's working around them. There, meeting them where they are, quite literally.
I mean, even just there's been times when we've turned up and just sat in gardens for the first 3-4 weeks and just literally sat on the doorstep and just got to know them through having conversations really informally like that.
And I think that's important, that we're aiming to go out and get to know them, aren't they? We're not going out with any pre-established ideas about what they might have experienced. We don't particularly read things before we go out. We want to know them as they want us to know them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and their
so-
perspective of what's happened.
So giving
for
them an
and-
opportunity to present
Yeah.
themselves in their, you know, as they are, rather than as a report
Yeah.
seeks to kind of define them. Yeah, I think that's really
Yeah.
important.
And I think there's something about being persistent and sticking in there and just going back and back and back, time after time
Yeah.
after time, writing out another note, and
Yeah,
that just genuinely sort of demonstrates that I'm here for you a little bit different. And do you know what I mean?
being willing to sort of
Yeah.
change the format as well. You know, there's practical stuff, isn't there, about changing phones or not having a fixed abode.
Yeah, not having a fixed number, different number every week,
Yeah.
different SIM card, different address, staying so for safety.
Sort of
very
recognising,
different.
isn't it, how vulnerable a cohort of young people we're working with, and we have an outreach model for for a reason, don't we? Because an outreach means sort of doing whatever it takes, I suppose.
Yeah.
And like you say, that taking it, looking at it as if what have we done to engage them, not placing our expectations with the young people on why haven't they engaged with us.
Yeah, and I think that we're really good at doing that.
Yeah.
And really trying to think of our drivers within that. What's getting in the way from us, and is it timings and caseloads and various things? And I think we're really good at sort of overcoming those barriers. Visiting on an evening and different times of the day and different methods, just really simple.
So in futures we work predominantly with post-removal support, but more recently we've started to support a few young people through the Prebirth assessment process. Can you tell us a little bit about the difference in that engagement that you found, if indeed there is any difference?
There are a lot of differences, aren't there?
Yeah.
And some of those are young people who we've worked with in a sort of post-removal context, then have gone on to work with them in Prebirth, so we've been able to almost compare that in real time, haven't we? And I think the first thing to say is that when you're working in Prebirth, there's so many other constraints, but also so many other structures, aren't there, from a service level, you know, in terms of obviously the timescales are tighter. For the Prebirth assessment, it has to be done in a certain amount of time, and obviously, you know, pregnancy only lasts so long. Would you say that, like, you feel that the young people's engagement is different though?
I think the way that they experience futures is inevitably different, because, as taking safeguarding as an example, our practice is different dependent on pre-birth or post-removal. So in post-removal we're obviously speaking to them about safeguarding, but by and large the support is built around them, it's focused entirely on them. And when you're working in the context of pre-birth, you're thinking about everything in terms of what is the impact of this on your unborn baby, and you have to be able to have that conversation with them, so that must be experienced in a different way by them.
I think young people have spoke about not being as open in pre-birth because of the things that are going to be written down, things that are going to be fed back, things that are going to be shared. So that relationship that we get in post-removal, of that real openness and rawness of what's really going on in life, but we're not going to get that in the pre-birth, because it's them, they're thinking about the impact and their experiences of their previous post-removals.
So you're saying, like, formally the engagement can sometimes be higher in pre-birth because the stakes are sometimes higher, because we're actually working towards hopefully helping that young person keep that baby, if that's what's deemed to be the best outcome. So formally they may be engaging more because the stakes are higher, but actually in post-removal support, the nature of engagement is actually more authentic, isn't it? Because they almost sort of have like nothing to lose, as it were.
It's thinking about it from their perspective. They're probably thinking, how safe is it for me to be as open about this stuff? Because if they've had experience removal, they know exactly what the stakes are. They can't be in denial about that. They know that the worst possible thing can happen and does happen. So in terms of what it must take for them to be able to go there and share when things aren't going the way they ought to be or people hope, it's asking such a lot. And that, you know, it's why we know that so much of this work is relational, and that relationship, the quality of that relationship will define and have a huge impact on what engagement does look like.
So Futures has been running now for 4 years. Could you tell us a little bit about what you've actually learned about engagement at the point of post-removal and at the point of pre-birth?
I think for me sometimes there is genuinely a feeling of whether we've got somebody straight away from our experiences of the work that we've done previously.
Yeah, almost a gut feeling when you first meet a young person, whether or not they might be ready, or you start to gather signs, don't you, about what might inform whether they're ready. Sometimes a young person might want to get into, I don't know, work or volunteering or something like that, but they might not be ready to do some therapeutic work, and that's a challenge, isn't it?
And I think we try and create the conditions where it's okay to not be ready. That's not another thing to feel bad about. That it's really positive to be able to recognise that, and that, you know, we'll, depending on how old they are, we'll be there when they are.
I mean, the fact that a lot of young people, whether it's to do with pre-birth and being pregnant, or just later in life, are coming back to us, I think that, you know, that's reassuring, isn't it? That we're giving a message, even if we only end up meeting the young person twice, and then they decide that they're not ready. So if we can give that message across of who we are and who we're not, you know, that we're not social care. Okay, we're connected to social care, but we're not there to assess them in the same way that social workers are. If they can hold on to that idea in 6, 7, 8 months, 2 years time, and think, you know, they have a sense of who we are, then that's positive, isn't it? It's a positive outcome.